Good evening. Welcome to Siddha-Vetha webinar series. Today we have an interesting topic on ancient Indian tradition of scientific living and practice. And I wish you all happy Pongal and Makara Sankranti. So the topic will also cover why we are celebrating this kind of festivals, the scientific aspect of it. So our speaker today is Dr. Balram Singh, who has his PhD in, has been professor since 1990 and Henry Dreyfus teacher scholar since 1997 at UMass, Dartmouth, and at the Institute of Advanced Sciences, Dartmouth, Massachusetts. Is also an adjunct professor at the School of Sanskrit and Indian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. He has been visiting professor at Georgetown University, Harvard Medical School, Yang Ming University, Taiwan, and Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. He is currently the president of the Institute of Advanced Sciences and also the founder of Prime Bio Inc., a biotechnology-based company. Dr. Singh is the founding director of the Botulinum Research Center, established in 2003 and currently located in INATS. Is also the founding director of the Center of Indian Studies in the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. He is currently an adjunct professor at the School of Sanskrit and Indian Studies, in JNU, Delhi. Dr. Singh is an alumnus of Kamala Nehru Indian Institute and Technology of Awadh University, Ayodhya, India, Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, India, and Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. He has been conducting research on botulinum and tetanus neurotoxins, and also on Ayurveda, yoga, and mind and consciousness. He has published more than 14 books and over 332 articles. And to Indians' philosophy and tradition. He has also established poems in Vishwa. You can visit the pravatka.com and also Vedic Waves. He has a blog there. He is associate editor of 4 journals, including Biochemical and Biophysical Research Reports, Ayurveda Journal of Health, and International Journal of Indian Culture and Business Management, Ayurveda Health, Happiness, and Harmony book series, and Motilal Banaras Siddhas. So, a lot of accomplishments. So I welcome the speaker to, start the talk. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's my honor to be presenting to your group and sharing some of my thoughts. I will share my slides, and hopefully that is visible. Are my slides visible?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right. So it's wonderful to speak on my favorite topic of ancient Indian tradition of scientific living and practice. As we can see, some of the things becoming more obvious today, particularly for the past a few months since Corona time. People are slowly realizing Namaste is better than handshake. And so that's a very practical way of living. There are, of course, philosophical reasons why we do that. But, and there is so much interpretation of all those things, and I'm not going to go into detail because it's so obvious. But important thing is, in the United States, even before Corona, there was a total of $46 billion loss due to cold and cough that could be avoided if people did not shook hands. So that itself is a very worthwhile thing to think about as a practice. And now that I don't even need to explain the science of it, because it's so obvious, everybody knows that we do not want to shake hand because people get contamination and infection. And namaste gives a very nice way of greeting, and your hands are close to you. You can almost consider this to be a yoga exercise, if anything, if not anything else. So the that's part of the reason why ancient Indian tradition of science is very, very fascinating to me. So now with that, I do want to add to my greetings to Makar Sankranti and Pongal. And they, of course, one could go into details, and many of us probably already know this, that is the travel of the, not exactly travel of sun, although we call it like that. It is the Earth's position in such a way that the sun seems to be moving towards the northern hemisphere, and so this winter solstice that is somewhere between December 22nd or 23rd to January 14th, 15th, is the what is really being celebrated as a Makar Sankranti. But important thing is, of course, we know astronomical significance of it, and but more importantly, two important things into that. One is that this tradition recognized it. This tradition recognized a long, long, long time ago that they were able to know this astronomical event that was going on. Secondly, they celebrated it, which means they really connected themselves to the nature. And nature is very important part. I think people should realize that that Indian tradition has always associated in various ways with the nature. And nature is really the science. The understanding of nature is really what science is. There is nothing we know better, no matter how much artificial thing we might have created. They're all, including engineering, is mostly inspired by biological systems or natural systems. For example, engineering, there is so much engineering learned from biomimetics. So that part is very important to realize, that Indian tradition always has connected itself with the knowledge of the nature and the living from that knowledge. So, and that's the one of the things that we see in Makar Sankranti, and you will see that this is the common theme in Indian tradition, and this is how they make it more scientific. So modern, I want to take you to a few things. I want to talk a little bit about the culture and religion, about the world as it has evolved, and also a little bit about history and geography of India. And then we'll try to connect that with the self-understanding and how we connect to the society. And then we will think about how the science has been organized, and how science society has been organized, how they are compatible with each other. And then we can think that how some of this thing I just told, that when we say namaste, we realize already that it is what is in me is what I am bowing, that is also in you. And so that is really the connection. There is no difference, there is no discrimination that can happen. So I will discuss a little bit about this idea and how this is practiced, and how this is scientific, and that hopefully that will conclude, and then we will take some questions. So now we want to think about what is modern science. It has started with European Renaissance. And Renaissance means, something that was there and was not there in the middle, and then it was revived. That means this the tradition, the modern science is really something that was revived. So somehow that got distorted. Now this, even Plato's symposium, as they used to call, Plato promoted great age of universe, deep time, and thought about that. But that happened in 300 approximately 350 BC. And and then something happened that until 14th to 17th century, when the European Renaissance happened. And what was that happened? And that was a basically one thing, Roman Empire, and secondly, the religion that came in Christianity. And I don't mean to really criticize. I'm just only telling the history of how the Renaissance occurred. So this is, I'm just quoting one gentleman who talks about evolution, and he talks about the evolution was really the idea of pagans. So when the pagans are known for their connection with nature, and that's the connection I'm trying to make. So there was a connection with nature even in Europe, but then this was somehow at one point got discontinued, and then that got revived again. So what we are seeing today in science is really a revival of that pagan tradition. The pagans, for example, were having evolutions. And what was the pagans? One of the ideas, we just passed Christmas, and most of us who live in the United States have one form or the other, some Christmas tree at home, because it's just a cultural thing. But actually, this was not a Christian, it's not a Christmas tree. It was a tree that used to be worshipped before Christian era. And it was the pagan tradition that they used to do. And the region they used to do it, that because they used to be very cold in Europe, and they thought somehow this tree has power to survive the cold weather in the Europe. And so they worshipped it, thinking that it has some power, and they wanted to learn something out of it. And that is how this tradition came for the Christmas tree. And also the Jesus Christ being born, what everybody knows this, all the Christians know he was not born in December, but it was something that was being celebrated in Europe. So they use that also as part of appropriation and celebration. There is nothing right or wrong about it. I mean, this, whatever you can just join hands with. In India also, where we have many traditions. For example, Diwali, Buddhists have their own region why they celebrate. Sikhs have their own region, and Jains have their own regions, and of course Hindus have their regions, and then other smaller sects also have their own regions why they celebrate Diwali. Diwali remains the same, but the regions differ. So similar thing happened in Europe. There is nothing sinister about it. It's just, that was available. But interesting thing is, there is a group. There is a professor, Yaswant Pathak, a good friend. He has been organizing this and traditions, native traditions, and they get together. And I was fortunate to attend one of them in Mysore in India. And so you can see some of these pictures in the middle that people gathered. This is the same group, and then they were celebrating like fire in the middle and connection with the nature and other things. But what pagans were described in Europe and Arabia and Americas, and to a certain degree even today, actually, that they were like country dwellers, villagers, rustic people, unlearned, yokel, just like, in India today, we call them Dehati or Gawar or something like that. And their practices were polytheistic, whatever they call that, animistic, because, they think that just like in India, people worship animals, and nature believer, goddess believer, all that fire rituals, all this, they were identified with that. And they were connected to Plato thoughts. So they were not, those things were basically discorded. And that's how the science, there was a dark age since the 1st century onwards, up until, at least in Europe, up until the 14th century. And that is the history of science. Now that has not happened in India. In India, it continued, fortunately. And so the scientific nature has continued in India. And now I want to just briefly discuss what's the difference between religion and dharma, because in India, actually, the concept is that of dharma. And that is very important to know. In religion, you have spirituality, also you have in dharma in some form of spirituality. You call it a little bit different. There are some subtle differences in spirituality and adhyatmic, but nevertheless, for now, at least our discussion we can consider. But there are contrasts. The religion is organized, where the dharma is freedom. You have free thing to do whatever you want to do. there is a God in religion. You don't need to have a God in Dharma. Actually, whatever the translation of God is, Ishvara or Bhagwan, are different, as you will see a little bit later in my presentation. And then there is social organization, whereas Dharma itself is up to you, individual actually. Individual people have to perform their Dharma. Religion has some prescription, you have to do certain things, but in Dharma there is no prescription. You can choose whatever you want to do. And in religion there is generally an emphasis on rights, whereas in Dharma there is an emphasis on duty, because you do your own karma. You do not worry about what you are getting, what you're not getting. And religion is exclusionary. It does not allow you to become uh, belong to more than one religion. But in Dharma there is evolution. You can evolve from whatever you are to something else, and there is no restriction. So this is very important for people to know, because most of the time when we speak in English, we use religion in place of Dharma, and it does not really match many places what people in dharmic traditions do. And so consequently, you find yourself to be odd trying to explain certain things, because that doesn't exactly fit. So it's important to know. Now, one of the things that is important to know is that they had the knowledge, scientific knowledge, and I'm putting this a big picture here, but really only making one point. They knew how to do numbers. So numbers in Roman culture was only up to 106, whereas in India they had up to 10 to the power 53. Right, like a huge number tradition that they have had. And this is something I'm quoting from Valmiki Ramayana, just to say that this was very, very old. So that's the only purpose. And they talk in that, when he talks about that Rama was born, which month and which tithi. So that means they already were knowing how to count these things. And this counting is very important. The two colleagues in my institute, and some of you maybe even knowing them, and that there are using their calculations of astronomical calculation connecting with the archaeological evidence. They have, and my purpose here is not really talk about there. I don't understand all of it clearly, but I have some gist of their work. And that work says the time that we have, India has time. Mahabharata happened, for example, 5561 BC. Ramayana happened 12,209 BC, which means like almost 14,000, more than 14,000 years ago. And if you really want to talk about, I had requested Nilesh to look at where the Vedas were. So at least they were 20,000 years ago. So it's like a huge number of years that we are talking about in Indian tradition than what we normally see in this modern world, or the Western world order, where people talk about the whole thing started maybe. I mean, in the Bible it says it started 4004 BC, but then most of the writing and everything else started much later. So for them, it's really the whole world really started just very recently. But Indian tradition is very old. And interestingly, I'm just going to skip some of these details that they have, a lot of details. You can actually, if you want to look for them on internet, Nilesh Oak or Rupa Bhati, and you will find them talking about it. But more importantly, so because this very old tradition in India, there is so much things written in India. Even writing started much later, but the knowledge was there before. And so now they have so many manuscripts and books, and they have catalogs of those books, and they have catalogs of those catalogs. And India has the largest number of catalogs of catalogs. Which basically, the only point I try to make with this is that means it's a very old culture. You have a lot of information. And that information, even older than that, the information came because India is very, very, very old and very unique country. And one of them, the thing that is very important for us to know, is that India was this Indian subcontinent is very unique. It came from African continent and then slowly moved 10 million years ago, slammed into Asian continent, and it made itself to be a very unique place because there is Himalayas. And Himalayas protects India or Indian subcontinent from ice age, from all cold weather. So India is really a protected country, almost like, sealed it. And so it has continued for very, very long time. Of course, human beings came on Earth, as we know from science, is only about 2 million years ago. But the 2 million years ago, they have been in India, actually. So because they literally came from Africa, they moved to India, and everybody in the world that we know, 99% people, really have passed through India. So India has very rich culture, rich history, and very unique geography. And this is very important. And why we see this? So the nature is with them all the time. So they always use Prakriti. They always have local thing, because that local thing is very unique and very important, very protected. So they always have indigenous, and they have time to investigate, all kind of things. They have time to investigate. They also have time to do research. You can go back and look at this, and somebody had said this thing, and somebody has observed that, and what we are doing is exactly the same thing today. And then they have organized in so many ways. There are so many schools of thoughts, and at least there are 6 major schools of thought. And that is what is called scientific. You organize the information and then look at in some kind of framework, and then you express them. You express them in music, in art, in your lifestyle, in your food, in your clothes, and you find India to be full of all those things. So that's, and then finally those things get translated, and sometimes they get translated for use somewhere else. Like we live in the United States, we bring some of the ideas from India and we translate them how to be use them here, and the other people also do that. And sometimes few things get lost in the translation, and sometimes we forget that this is translated from somewhere else. And then, after a while, people will just forget, and then they will add their own way of doing that. And sometimes there will be conflict in, what you understand in India, what we might have understood a long time ago, and what we understand today. So all those things, of course, there is nothing new about it. That's just part of scientific culture. You as a when you have a scientific culture, all these things are bound to happen. And one very interesting thing about this is then, and this is very unique again to India, it's a very, very modern India, which there are so many problems with the governance and other things in every country. But one thing is very true, the Indian Constitution has this Article 51A that says that it is duty of every citizen of India to develop scientific temper. So that scientific temper is not only is in practice and in living and in ancient times, it is also recognized today by the Constitution of India. And that is very important. Now, let's see a few things that have been there for a long time. One thing, 91,000 animal species in India. There's no other country which has as many animal species. 48,000 plant species. India has 2% of land of the world and 8% of plant species. So it's like disproportionately nurturing to nature or to other living things that have been around. And there are some, of course, some people may not like this, but this is just a fact I'm telling. There are 68,000 jatis in India. No, there are only about 5,000 have been really cataloged. The rest of them, they don't even, government has not been able to do. Even funny thing is, India has the largest number of political parties in on the whole planet. They have 2,598 political parties that are registered with the Election Commission. So it's humongous. Compare that to United States, only 2. China has only 1. Britain has a couple. So it's like, it's a mother of all that diversity. And so there is so much for people to read and learn and analyze and examine and try to understand. So now I want to talk about how do they connect to this whole thing, and because it's a long period of time. So you have this Vesti is one of the concept, is a philosophical concept, which is basically individual psyche or mind. I am whatever I am. I think so. I am. And then there is a society around you, which has a huge effect. I don't have time to talk much about the details about it, but society has humongous effect on person and the vice versa, including actually gene expression is affected by who you sit next to. And then there is the environment that affects the society and us. And then there is this big thing, samasti. Now, Vyasti and samasti is a Vedic concept. Now, this is also indirectly used in concept of thermodynamics and quantum mechanics both. It's called system and surrounding. I, again, wouldn't go into detail, but some of you may be familiar with system and surrounding, where we calculate entropy or enthalpy, and they have to be put together to think about what might be happening or might happen. And this is the same concept as Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande. The thing, we are so connected to everything, we are manifested, or something has manifested in us. There is nothing, no disconnection between us and whatever else rest is around. So this is a concept that only India has, and many of us are trying to connect. I'm a member of several organizations. One of them is World Association of Vedic Studies, which goes around and talks about these things and trying to let people know, because this is good for everybody. I am very heavily involved in a process, that last one I just showed you. This one is that I am very heavily involved in training teachers, because teachers teach these students in America, high school, middle school teachers, because then many students will never get to see anything about India except in their high school. So we now have trained maybe 500 teachers in this country in last 10 years and continue to do that. And where they come and, stay for a week, and it's like a program that goes for 5 days, and they live with us, they eat, and then all kind of stuff. So that is also very important to try to connect ourselves with the rest of the world, so that the rest of the world also understands what the culture is and how we are connected to each other. And in ancient times, and I've taken this from Kalidas Raghuvansam. And in that, only point I want to make here is that we used to have Chakravarti Rajas, Mahasamrats. We used to have Chakravarti Samrats who also used to connect to the rest of the world. And most of the time, almost all the time, not most of the time, they never went out there to rule over any country. They just only went out to establish the dharmic way of living, which meant basically that there should be justice for everybody, including all living beings. And so this was another way of connecting. India always connected. We have had at least a dozen or so Chakravarti Samrats. So then in their own time, they were connected to, and Raghuvans is a very famous one, because the Samrat Raghu was very, very dominating, and that's why even Ram is known more as a Raghu Kul Bhushan or Raghuveer, and all kind of things about Raghu, because of the great thing that Raghu did. And one of the great thing about these Chakravarti Samrats was that they did not keep it for themselves or for their next generation. They used to donate. They used to give away everything that they had, and so that next generation will have to do it for themselves. And so it says, here is a Raghukul Reeti Sada Chali Ai Pran Jai Par Bachan Na Jai. Those of you who do not know Hindi, it basically means the tradition of Raghukul to keep your word is more important than even your life. And they also have, I'm quoting, I'm by the way from Ayodhya, so I'm quite familiar with the language and the culture there. And so forgive me for using this Hindi from that kind of text. This is Tulsi Raman. And there also the other thing was Parahit Saris Dharma Nahi Bhai. Means it is the welfare of others is the biggest dharma. So whatever we do, whatever our lifestyle is, however we live, this is the standard for India. And if people live like that, they will be in much better shape. And the system that they used was, at least during the Ram's time, was Prajatantra, or as we call it today. Democracy is not exact translation of Prajatantra, and I wouldn't go into detail of it, but I have given some lectures you can probably find online, looking for if you are looking for that. So this process of connecting to the rest of the world, always to protect the planet, was in the tradition of India. And this is something that if we did today, those of us who are in the United States or rest of the world, we are traveling, or those of us even in India, have opportunity to do it in India, because India is somehow, I find they need a lot more of this kind of tradition than maybe outside. So anyway, we can find a way to change this world. And this guy, Steve Jobs, thought the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who really do. And interesting thing about him is that he was a regular traveler to Kedarnath. So this is the main point I wanted to make, that he went to Kedarnath, and Kedarnath is in the caves of Himalayas, and how important it was to go there and connect with the nature. Actually, there was a Zuckerberg mentioned once that when he was in trouble and he went to Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs advised him to go visit this temple. Now, this temple tradition is also very important. Again, because of the paucity of time, I wouldn't go into details of what the different values of temples are, but the temples originally, they were meant to convey and the practice of science, scientific living and scientific life, including the deities and others, which I hope they will get time to get to a little bit. And so these kind of things are very important traditions. These are living traditions in India. And so now I want to come back to the idea of science, what the science, the practice of science in India. Practice of science in India is Ayurveda, the knowledge or the science of life. And the way this lives in Ayurveda is that, you have body doshas like kapha, pitta, and vata. And this connects with the mind, which has sattva, rajas, and tama, and the psyche of this. And this connects to the seasons. It connects to your daily life, dincharya, ritucharya, and also your diets. So this is all part of living, connecting everything, and then have a good understanding of it, very systematic, very detailed understanding that more and more people are trying to get to this to understand science. And as it was given in my introduction, I am a managing editor of a journal called Ayurveda Journal of Health, which is really published in the United States. It's a peer-reviewed journal. And it is run mostly by Americans. The white Americans are mostly, I would say 90% of people who are involved in this Ayurveda practice in this country are white Americans. The same, yoga is part of it. We know that there are about 20% or so of Americans regularly practice yoga. And so this whole thing is opening, and we need to examine this a little bit more. So the way this defines your health versus disease is that if you live with nature, prakriti, then you are healthy. And if you don't, then you are in vikruti or in disease. And Ayurveda is becoming again very important, very critical. Even I'm involved in a couple of these researches where we are trying to, actually not trying to, we are trying to promote this, but there is already evidence that these Ayurvedic herbs are very important to increase your innate immunity that might be good for your fight against COVID. And so there are at least few items that are being done in clinical trials, and I think that will be very helpful also. So I want to look into the science and scientific temper and how science is important in Indian culture, and how Ayurveda, some of the principles of Ayurveda are there, that it is really dependent on the time and place. It's not just only everything has to come from India. Actually, Ayurvedic practice would say that they have to find herbs locally, wherever you are and whenever you are, when means in the season. So the local herbs are very important, and some of us are doing some research and involving our American colleagues to create this understanding and practice of Ayurveda for the entire world, so that everybody is healthy and happy. And in that sense, when we are talking about scientific tradition and living, then you see that God does not exist it does not have to exist. And Patanjali's Yoga Sutra tells the God is you, Ishvara is you. God may be, there's English word, it's not exact translation because God has very different concept. But you can, Ishvara is you. When you practice and get enlightened to the level where the klesa and karma phalas are not important for you, then you go beyond klesa and karmaphala, then you reach the status of Ishvara, and which, there are many characteristics of Ishvara. One of them is that to treat everybody equal. And so equality is very important. Freedom is very important. For that, you need to have independence. And there is a way to do all this. It's in Indian tradition that you can get to all this. You can reach to the level of Ishvara by practicing certain things in certain ways. Anybody can do, everybody can do. There is no exclusion in here. And so you practice yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha, or more specifically, you need to do tapa, and then you need to study yourself swadhyaya, and then you focus to reach to this level of ideal condition when rag, dvesh, or papa and punya, you are become untouched by it in your because you know so much about yourself that you do your own nature. And when you do your own nature, when you become swadharmi, and Bhagwan Krishna says swadharme nidhanam shreyas paradharmo bhayavaha, it means so your dharma is the biggest thing. That means your nature. And when you start doing your karma according to your nature, you're free, because you don't worry about anybody, whatever they think, whatever they say, and whatever happens to everybody else doesn't really matter, because you're just practicing your own nature. And when you live life like that, you become swa-astha. It means you are now established in yourself, in your own nature, in your own prakriti. And that gives you the equality, because everybody lives in their own prakriti, then everybody is equal. So the freedom, independence, equality, which is a big slogan in the United States, can be only obtained with this scientific way of living, and then practicing yoga's techniques, and practicing is very important. The practice word is very important in this. Now, this is a contrast. In America, we $100 bill, actually see probably $1 bill had the same thing. Says, in God we trust. So we're talking about a God somewhere sitting somewhere that is going to be doing things. Whereas in Indian system, from ancient times, it's very scientific. Everything very rational. You can get there, and then you don't need to invoke God who is sitting somewhere else. Of course, the concept of Paramatma is in India also, in Hindu tradition, Vedic tradition. That Paramatma is there, and you are a manifestation of the Paramatma. That means you are not different. You are the same. It's just like a drop in ocean it's also part of the ocean. So that is a very different concept. Then God sits down there and creates and sends you somewhere, and then so it will punish you if you don't do certain things, certain ways. Again, their situation has been created the way it has been created because of their circumstances. I do not think that they designed all this to create problem for others. But the point is that when we're looking at scientifically, then we have to think. Whereas in 100 rupees, it says that I give my word. Basically, it says मैं बचन देता हूँ. Just same thing. प्राण जाए पर बचन न जाए. That's very important for Indian tradition. So that is very scientific. There is a scientific way of looking at information where you have agamas and you have nigamas. In agamas, you have yoga, seva, local tradition, tantras, Ayurveda, because it is a way of learning. This is two ways of learning science. One is deductive way, which you have the experience, information, and eventually make a theory. And the other one is inductive way, which is you already have the information and then you pass it on for people to follow or confirm. Now, if it is a scientific, then you will allow people to confirm. If it is not scientific, it's just religious, then it's like I was saying, it's prescription. So I put here Vedas also, Bible, Quran, they're all nigamas, they give ideas. But the difference is that in Veda type of nigamas, they are always being interpreted and reinterpreted. And you can even change it. You can come up with different kind of ideas and you can test them. In Bible and Quran also happens to a certain degree because there are at least some commentaries that come later on. But the basic things, there is so much resistance. So that's little bit less open to science. And that's all I will say. Otherwise, there are a lot of good things, and in every religion, they all were definitely made by good intentions. And so you see this agamas and nigamas where there is spirituality, and then you have mind, body, intellect. This is agamas where you can still play around with this. And then when you reach certain level of consciousness, then that becomes nigmas, and then there is a back and forth. Now, interesting thing about living and in today's world is that we are forced in some ways to live a very artificial, inductive way of living, or Nigama's way of living, particularly about from Bible's point of view. This, I know you probably may not be able to read that much, but the concept of week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it is created by an artificial model. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a model where there was a light, then it's called Sunday. When there was a water, it's called Monday, and there were organisms that called Tuesday, and things like that. So it's very logically made. Sunday, the sun, the water, the microorganisms, the plants, the animals, and then human beings, and then the God took rest on the seventh day, and that's how the 7 days came. But this is just a model. There is no other natural region that you can see. Whereas in Agamas, you really live life based on this fortnights, Shukla Paksh and Krishna Paksh. And based on that, because there is a moon position, you are always connected to the nature. And this is one of the things that I was talking about that Indian tradition has, that it always connects with the nature, including the calendar. So this week calendar is not really a proper calendar. And this kind of philosophies do have a role in creeping in science. So actually I always quote this from this book, Physics and Philosophy, written by Werner Heisenberg, who also got Nobel Prize for Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And he says in this that, to understand the basic principles of science, you have to understand the philosophy and correct use of that philosophy based on whatever the assumptions are. And then he said that those assumptions actually may not be compatible with other people's culture and philosophy. Particularly, he mentions, this is not Heisenberg mentioned, he's actually somebody who wrote forward, Law and philosophy professor, who says that it is incompatible with the family, caste, tribally centered mentality of native Asian, Middle Eastern, African people. So whatever we look at the science today, modern science, we have to always think that this comes with some kind of philosophy, which may not be matching with you. So it's important to think about that and how to bring that practice. So that, and for everybody, not just for people in India, but in India, like I said, they have had time to learn and practice this a lot more. And if you don't, then you see that, there will be Karl Marx coming at, he will think that the society has to be divided based on economy, or Samuel Huntington, who will talk about the religion. So we need to think about, a more natural, rather than this is artificial way of doing things. And more natural ways of doing things is sun always rises in east. It's just a natural phenomenon, but just so happens it arises in east. And the light is always connected with knowledge. And so people always look for east. Even in Bible, it says that 3 wise men came from the east. And so we have to always understand that a connection of east to the knowledge and to the rest of the world, and why sun sets in the west and what does that mean, all that is very important to understand. We can talk about it almost an hour on this particular topic itself, but I just wanted to give one example that, those of us who are in the United States get call, and then, this is, for example, just evening here, but somebody from India, if they will call, they will say, oh, good morning. And, because they just don't know that where we are. So sometimes we need to understand that we are 12 hours apart. And so some of the thing that looks fine here is not exactly right there. And we don't need to copy. We need to understand each other, not copy. So, and science is one of those things, and practice and living life is also one of those things that we should try to do. Okay, I'm going to skip this. Well, maybe just make a point here that, so it's very important in India, symbolism is that, you have Bhumi Devi. Also, they had in Greek tradition, they also have the idea of Gaia. Gaia basically also means earth. And that has now been accepted, particularly in today's world when the environmental problems are coming to roost, that, the earth is alive. So is Bhumi. And I think it's important to learn some of those literature texts and understand what was going on in there. So recently we had a conference in which the India's health minister was part of it, Dr. Harshvardhan. And I just wanted to see how confused sometimes even Indians are. That's why very important, those of you who are listening from India, that it needs to be conveyed to the parties, to intellectual groups, to media, that they need to start thinking a little bit more coherent. So he talked about two things. He said, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. India believes in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and they believe in nationalism. They are contradictory. If you believe in nationalism, you cannot consider Vasudhaiva. If the whole the world is a family, then you have to treat them as a family. You can't be separate. So my suggestion was, and I made this suggestion while he was there, because I was one of the organizers in this. So India must change its instance to internationalism, and should be done through duty in service of the humanity, and with all this knowledge of traditions and practices that India has had. And so I propose that we come up with a concept of a different world order. That would be the Ayurveda yoga world order, and in which we serve the people and help them to become self-sustaining, healthy, and harmonious living, not only among the people, but also with the nature. And with those kind of service, I think India and those of us who live outside India and are connected to India will find a great satisfaction in our own lives. And with that, I think my time is done, Sean. So I'm going to stop at this point and then see if there are further questions, and I might bring a couple of more slides that I'm not going over right now. So if I need to, I will bring that later on, but I think my time of 40 minutes that you had kindly provided me is
Well,
over.
if you have a couple of slides, I think you should just finish
Okay,
a
you
couple
will
of
allow me.
slides,
Thank
please.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
I just wanted to say that, so when I'm talking about Ayurveda and yoga world order, we need to contrast what we have in modern science, and because the world is scientific world. So for example, Ayurveda way of making medicine or herbal medicine is based on a very different kind of idea. In chemistry that I teach in chemistry departments, the structure is very important. Whereas in Ayurveda, is the sensory chemistry is very, because we only sense from our own senses, the 5 sense organs. And then we find that Ayurveda is very much compatible with modern science. The Vat Pitta Kapha that I talked about, there is a biochemical basis of that. There are certain things which are in Vata, and there is like positive here, and then there is in Pitta is not there, and Kapha is there. And so if you look at the whole combination, they are all very different in compared to all this. When we look at some of these biochemical important biochemical molecules or systems. And then it's very interesting that it's also males and females are different, which obviously will be expected to. So I just want to maybe one more slide if it is okay. So this, what I wanted to talk about this is that Ayurveda has an entire system of scientific way of looking at it. And this is very ancient technology that Ayurveda has. It made the medicine and other things. And that technology was not only limited to Ayurveda, just like today's technology is not limited only to medicine, but also it's aircraft and in planes and all kind of other technologies, house building and things like that. So same was true at that time. So for example, there is a technology on display in Delhi where there is this pillar does not rust. There is no other society has made anything even today which does not rust. No matter what steel they make, it rusts. So they had this technology. And what was that technology? That is also Ayurvedic technology, that technology of making bhasma. So bhasma technology, which is the nanoparticles, herbal phytochemistry that was developed thousands of years ago, is also available to other kind of technologies and other kind of things. And then this kind of technology was actually used even as late as a couple of 100 years ago when Portuguese came. Actually, they used many of these technologies to make a lot of money also. And they actually made so much money. There is a historian in university that I taught, Timothy Walker, who found that actually they made so much money that they actually bought Brazil out of that money. The Portuguese bought Brazil out of that money. And today there is so much controversy about whether this metal bhasmas can be used or not. And my lab has done some research, and we found actually this is very, very safe and very different, entirely different kind of chemistry. It acts as a bioenhancer. Actually, we have been filed a patent on it. So I think the science can be practiced, and you can always see it, and it is there. So the practice and the knowledge of science and in the tradition of India from ancient times to modern times is there, and it can be used, and it should be, I think, promoted, in my opinion, and definitely should be practiced. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Very wonderful talk. I think, you know, I think you have really nailed this. This is like very timely. What you have been uh, talking, I've been contemplating on these things because, as you know, people who have come out of the country and who have lived in other country, and then we are looking India from a different perspective. And so now you're talking about the ministry, you're fixing what ministers is thinking, right? Their perspective is totally different. And the feeling we feel that, oh, maybe they should have fixed this way, why they are not doing this. We have a solution to the whole world, and we have everything, and why are we not doing this? I know what you're you know what you're saying. I feel it. So here is a challenge, sir. You have been a scientist, so we understand that this is a paradigm shift and is an indigenous science and technology and need to be. And you nailed it basically, because the way Ayurveda and Siddha, whatever our traditional systems are developed, are indigenous systems, and they have to be not compared with modern science, like going drug delivery mechanism and all this crap, right? So we have to do a different prototype kind of experiment. It's a paradigm shift experiment, and which is also we can do scientific methods for that. And that's those things are available. A lot of people even in the West, they are trying to do that kind of things. And we can just use this methodology. But overall, I think this is I mean, we should organize a bigger conference. I think this very limited time, but I would open up for questions now. And we have Dr. BVK Shastri. You might be knowing him.
Yes, yes, yes.
He's a scholar, and he was always, he was on the chat for a long time. He was so I would request him to uh, uh, you know share some of his views and any questions if he has. So let's add Shastri ji here. So
Yes, sir.
happy Pongal and uh, Magara Sankranti for
It's a,
your. Yes, doctor, go ahead, please.
Namaste to Shan and Professor Balram Singh,
Namaskar,
Nilesh
namaskar.
Tiwari, many others, Guraye ji, Anand Guraye, several other people who are on the chat who know me by my name or face at some occasions. Thank you. Professor Balram Singh, you made a very good point on the connection of what India can, what today's India can deliver to the global level solutions, which Sean referred to as paradigm shift. And India has been an enigma and a wonder for the West for pretty long time. Why is this? And why are we not able to deliver this particular thing? So my close to 20 years of interaction with the global teams and the American population came to the same conclusion what you pointed that we need the yoga and the related applied yogas, which are documented in Sanskrit and various other things, including the Tamil, Siddha-Bhasha. We need to understand what we have before we talk of something we had. What use is this particular knowledge? Okay, we had the knowledge of the bhasmas, agreed, but how are we using it today? We had the knowledge of iron that did not rust, but where did we lose it? We had a flying machine, great Pushpakrat, which we are so proud of, Hanuman and the Ravanas, Swaranamayi, Lanka, and all that. Where did it go? So there is no point in blaming the West, the thieves, and then the looters and all that, and then say Sanskrit is untranslatable. It simply means I don't know my heritage. So I am requesting for a paradigm shift, which Sean has been working on alternate energies. You have been working on the chemistry line and all that. What is the deliverable, practical deliverable for today's world, where this Sankranti, the transition is taking place from one perspective to another perspective? Are we looking at an amoeba using a telescope where it should be using a microscope? So do we have the right kind of a scope for this particular thing? If Ramayana had the numbers 10 raised to the power of some 64 or 72, Jains had the number. How do you explain the concept of the Gogol, the great name, where it means 10 raised to the power of whatever the number it has to go? Why did we lose it? Why did we lose the concept of the time connected to the universe? So this part of it is there in the brain-mind connections, brain science research, which NIH and DARPA have been funding in the name of consciousness research, where the yoga scientists and the modern scientists have to come together to understand the basics. So this is where Sean's work on alternate energy dealing with prana, ayush, and karma and samskar and all that is important. And your work from the chemistry side as a nanoparticle. Does the nanoparticle map to Anu of the Kanada? We don't know. We need to understand in tradition what science talks about the particles. And science need to understand when we talk of chitta, consciousness, is it the same thing as the neuroscientist signal? Dr. Vinod Deshmukh has written several articles on this particular thing. So it is in this context, it is this kind of a team, the platform, you have got the waves and then your own Indic Foundation and all the other teams. We need to work beyond the frame of religion. And you said that beautifully that the change in world order, that's something what I noted just as an interesting point. Yoga sciences can deliver what America is talking in terms of constitutional values, liberty, and all that. How do we deliver the best of our tradition in lands beyond? Thank you very much for that. And we do have plans to offer some of the educational programs with Veta Center and Sean and with you also, with your foundation. Because of pandemonium, I have not been able to travel back since March. Hopefully this January, February will help us to travel back and be back in action. Till then, we are on Zoom. Thank you very much, Sean, for this opportunity given.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add a little bit before giving it to Dr. Balramji. So here we made a prototype incinerator in 2016 in Coimbatore. An incinerator based on ancient Bhasma principle. So we went to Gujarat. Modi's, invited all the, business people every year. So we went there and we met the chief minister at times. So, and we proposed, we looked at Gujarat, how that's the time when Modi ji was bringing all the clean project and all. So, but what happens is here, they've just land filled all the plastics in one place, and when it's raining, it's again going back. The plastics are again going back. There is no way. Government did not have a plan for how to your cleaning up is fine, but where do you put this plastic? How do you recycle it? There was no plan. So we proposed this. I made a prototype in Coimbatore, and we said this is based on Bashma. There is almost, you can say like 5% probably there will be some elimination, but compared to whatever we have in the current system, there is no negative gases that go out, very so. But what happened, as you rightly said, the government thinking, they accepted immediately the prime, he called the secretariat people, and bunch of IAS people were there, so they immediately they all liked it, everything approved, kind of worldly. And the moment we came here, we tried to connect the government. It's done. That's it. There's no connections. There is no proper way of taking this. So there is a real time challenge. So please, you tell me. Yeah, when I definitely, you have been visiting the prime minister and other people bunch of times for these kind of problems. So how do you approach this, and what do you think, Dr. Balram Singh, about this kind of, how do a proposal be implemented in a bigger way, with the government? So.
Well, so I think in from an Indian tradition, ancient Indian tradition point of view, government has never done anything substantial, never. So whosoever was in government has not done anything great. Actually, even Ram couldn't kill Ravan if he was in government. So then it's very important lesson for us that he had to go to Vanvas to be able to kill to Ram. Otherwise, he could have just, his father couldn't kill Ravan also. So expecting, this is one of the problems I think Dr. Sastry was mentioning why something has not happened is, I mean, we can, I think, of course, I consider me to be the important person who is responsible for everything because I have not done what I should do. I should do more. And that only that attitude will take us anywhere. But if I want to put my scholarly hat and want to look at what may have happened over a period of time, it is this idea of expecting government to do something. Let some big daddy do something. And in our tradition, it never had happened like that. Whether it's during Mahabharata, they had to go to the forest for 13 years. Ram had to go to the forest for 14 years. And all the great things happened only because of that. So only a simple person can make these changes. In ancient time, one of the things that I think I tried to make the point about the Raghu, that these they were given the sanskaras to not keep anything for themselves. The king was really basically a pauper. They didn't have anything because everything that was there was really for people. And so he, even if he will put his life online, but he would not put anything that he gets for his next generation. He just gives it away. Then only you can get sanskaras to your next generation. And our problem, and I was in a conference a few weeks ago. There was an economist, some famous economist from Bangalore. I don't remember the name right now, who has written books and their textbooks and things like that. And what he was bragging about is that how Indians have 30% savings rate and how Indian companies have 70 times reserve for what their needs are. And it is nothing to do with Indian culture. We did not have anything. We are not supposed to save anything. We are supposed to give up everything. And if my children, and I'm trying to practice it, I have told my children I have nothing to give to them other than what I gave them, raise them so that they can get good education, and hopefully they will do something that I'm trying to do. I got some money, I put in the foundation. All of it, I put in the foundation. And then I told my children that they should add to it because they should be in a better situation to do that. Now, I'm not telling this to brag about it. I'm just telling I have felt this. the day we start practicing that, this world is really for me to do serving. Now, if we approach United States or Russia or China or whatever, with this idea that we are going to serve because we think there is an injustice being done, maybe not by somebody, but by their own ignorance, they are suffering, and we should feel very badly about that suffering, especially if we know something can be done. So that's yoga, Ayurveda, our own personal service. If we start doing that, the India will become Vishwaguru. India will not become Vishwaguru by having a $6 trillion or $5 trillion GDP. No, it will not. I can guarantee that would not become. So, and actually in the process, maybe lies the answer to you, Sean, that why nobody pays attention, because India is run by a bureaucratic system. That was, if you want to meet, I have met with the Prime Minister a couple of times, but if you really want to meet the Prime Minister, it will take maybe some, you may not even meet. And if you can get lucky, it will take 6 months, a year to meet. Whereas Ram, when he could not meet with that dhobi in the night, he was very upset about it. Can you imagine that kind of access you need to have? So what kind of system would allow that? I think we need to think about that. Then only maybe that will happen. So I hope I answered both of your questions.
Excellent, excellent.
Can I add a few words for what Sean
Yes,
said?
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
please go ahead.
First one about your Gujarat experiment, whatever happened. Let me share what happened in Karnataka. It is just about 40 years ago, and this is about the Ayurveda. See, cough and cold, one of the symptoms, even with corona, breathing trouble and other things, are long identified in Ayurveda. I was to give a lecture in one of the local places in Karnataka, and when I traveled on the day, when one day I had to stay there, water infected, and then I could not speak, lungs got the cough and all that kind of a thing. But I was staying with a family where the senior was a Ayurveda doctor. He said, don't worry, by evening you will be able to give your lecture. I said, how? He said, I will give you the Agastya Rasayan, the name of that particular, this one from Ayurveda. And I took it in 1 hour. My complete system was rejuvenated. I had the same product from one of the very famous traditional BB Pandit group of this one, Arya same product. I said, that did not work. How did it work with you here? He explained me something very significant. He said, the mass manufacturer was using the Loha Bhasma, the ashes of the metal, which is to be done from a different kind of a iron. Whereas this person was making just in the home scale, just for the local serving, using, the good old 7 o'clock stainless steel blades. You remember Balram Singh at that particular time, before the sticks came into picture. That stainless steel was the purest loha. That he used to make bhasma in the backyard of the house, using that puta and all that. And when that was used, it was extremely effective even in small doses. Now, 40 years down the line, his son is into medical practice, MBBS. He still prescribes the tablets, pills, and other things because that's the local practice. And the Ayurveda tradition is gone. Now, the Agastya Rasayan brand, which is available in the market, I don't want to name the popular brands, including the top one, they do not deliver the same efficacy because cough and cold with this weather change is a very common. Therefore, we need to do the Vanavas. And for me, this Vanavas is the American dream. So you have got to go out of Bharat and live there for some time to understand what is Bharat. And I am sure this is a story probably from the Tulsi Ramayana. When Ram, a popular story, when Ram came back to Ayodhya after the Ravan Vadha, he saw the economy was completely shattered. And Bharat was completely merged in Ram Upasana, Puja and all that. He did not care for the administration. The economy had broken down. So he asked the ministers, what is the best way? They said, the tax is not being paid by the farmers and everyone, including in the state. He said, how do I collect? He said, okay, just put a Gulganji, what you call that small measure, which the gold is weighed on one side, and tell them every person has to pay a gold equivalent of that to the state. And people try to put it, it would not work. And the story goes, when the person completely put all his, kind of illegal earnings onto the other side, then only it would balance a test. And then, okay, the Ram Raj became happy and all that. So if you have to take it to the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister has a mandate, and Prime Minister has a political party and several constraints. That is not the way a researcher works. So I want to the NRI team, our own friends, to look at where are you investing your money. I mean, you have done very wisely in putting it in a trust, in a what you call the foundation. Are we investing in the right place? Are we looking for the return on investment or creating a legacy? I don't think even 95% of the NRI teams having money are investing in the right area. They are investing in their personal passion. They are not investing in the right kshetra. If this can be set right, India can become great, because all of us, including the Balram Ji and then Shan, Lakshman, you have a Ram and he has a Lakshman, and all of us can come. I have a Krishna. So all of us can come back and serve Bharat and make it a real Vishwaguru. Thank you for allowing me to share this thought with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Shastriji. Wonderful words of wisdom. Timely. So let's allow, we can take couple of questions. So, for others, so don't think just only few people are talking. So you go ahead. We'll take a few more minutes. Anand Kurve, please go ahead.
Namaskar, Balram ji.
Namaskar.
Your point about inductive and deductive regarding the research and so on. In research, most of the time the deductive part is used and not so much on the inductive side. So if we give a stress on popularizing the inductive reasoning or inductive research, would it not, in your opinion, go a long way to improve this?
Well, so I mean the issue is here. Both ways are used, by the way. So, for example, a very big thing in science is used as a quantum mechanics is the inductive way of thinking, because they have equations and they think they will be able to predict. Eventually, we find, and actually that is not working. Also, I mean, I'm only talking about science. If you really talk about what Bible says, even what Veda says, there is a lot of problem. Dr. Sastry can probably attest to this. The people misunderstand. Actually, we just wrote a paper. It's published in Prachi Pragya, I think, is a Sanskrit journal, where we have one simple is Bhagavad Gita sloka that talks about 4 varnas, and then we have just picked up on sudras, where it says paricharyatmakam karma sudrasya api swabhavajam. And we have looked at many translations. People have forgotten about that api. They don't think about api. So what I'm saying is that, by looking at from the top also is a problem. And of course, looking at from the bottom is a problem, because unless you create a system to put everything together, it is difficult. But yoga, Ayurveda, many other tantras, they're all coming from, from bottoms up. That's why you have Kuladevi, Kuldevta, all this kind of thing, rather than have to have a particular god or something. All those things, I find that to be the deductive way is to be a very good way to go, give people more freedom. But also it needs to eventually get into the mode of, certain things to be standardized, and which is, for example, Vedas, there are a lot of things are standardized. Now, who are scientists? It is very important. I think Dr. Sastry is making this point that we need to invest in right places and things like that, which I think is very important. But you really have to find people who are totally detached. I went through that process of yoga training. How today's scientists are not scientists, honestly. I mean, including me, I do research. I do with research at the basic level, applied level, commercial level. And in particularly in commercial label, research is not really research. It's kind of some kind of a put together some portfolio for its approval by the FDA or some government agency. And that we just do it because government has created certain things certain ways. So I'm not very sure we are really scientists. If you really need to create a scientist, you need to train them mentally, physically, and knowledge, hands-on, all this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, in India, we have only people who copy. The bureaucrats that we have in Indian system. I'm sorry if any one of you are in that mode or your family is, but they are really, the best mind totally wastage. The best mind totally waste because they're put into this category of a middle range of managing the system. And whether it's science or it's society, either way, it's all messed up because anybody who is in power, anybody close to power, they want the only thing they are going to do to remain there in that position. That's just a first law of Newtonian motion. That if something is in some place, will continue to be in that place unless external forces are applied. And in this case, I feel that unless people, I really still think that it's individual. It is not, forget about Dr. Sastry. I don't necessarily agree that, we need to have doing this and that. I can do whatever I can do. You can do whatever you can do. And that's the only thing we have a control. And then the rest of it is we have to believe in whatever Vedas say or whatever our sages say. We are connected. If I'm part of you and you are part of me, if I'm going to do something, you're going to be affected. No question about it. And that's the only thing in our hand. And that's the only freedom we can exercise. And I think that's the only freedom Ram and Krishna both exercised. They both exercised
I
that.
agree with you.
They just did whatever
I
they
agree with
wanted.
you. I agree with you on that. So we need a teamwork where we have a common vision, not necessarily common mode of action, but common vision. Karma can be different, but darshan should be the same. So that is called the team and the vision. So let's work together for that. We are a game
Sure.
for that.
Sure. I mean, this is what we are doing. I mean, this kind of interaction is kind of working together. We
Right.
coming with some
Yeah.
ideas.
Well, I think more than interaction, I was, Dr. Shastri emphasis is also thinking that maybe we should co-realize some model together as a team, because see, now individuals have become organizations. See, every individual only is becoming an organization. We all create organizations because it is how we are so big. Individuals become so big, we have to create organizations. It's just us. The organization is just us, right? So even a little kid is now doing YouTube and other, because the individual has expanded to vast knowledge. Individuals are becoming a knowledge well. So we need to at some point we need to co-realize. A co-realization model is something that we can think about, where you be as yourself, but still there is a common region where we all have a common goal. And how do we achieve that common goal? So that can be worked out basically. And instead of giving, for example, we wanted to give a diploma in holistic integrated medicine. There's a course. Instead of ourselves giving, everybody can, you can join. Dr. Shastri wanted to join us. We all can give this together as different institutes. All can, so what happens is you're going to open up your students, our student, my students, Shastriji students. So we all are training. We teach the same thing from different perspective. We open, I think there is, what we all are talking is the same thing. And I have seen in many conferences, they start to, instead of the same thing, we start to, instead of co-realizing, we start debating. See, we all are in a common theme, and yet in conferences we start to debate. Oh, this is not the thing. In Vedanta conferences we have seen this thing happen, right? And instead, a common theme, like we wanted to do the purpose, and why don't we all join together, because you all are now just an individual as expanded as an organization, and that's our own perspective of looking the world. This is how I see the world, you see the world different ways. So but the thing is, when you do that, we may be able to really do bigger things. That's I believe in that. We can do bigger things than what we have today. So I just wanted to, we are getting late here. Any other questions? We'll take one more question perhaps from the audience. Anybody else want to talk or give a comment? Then we can close. Okay, there are no questions. Then so I just want to make a couple of announcements. We are opening a holistic integrated advanced diploma in holistic integrated medicine. We had this year, and this is happening soon in the month of February. We are doing a free interview with all the professors who will be teaching following this Saturday. So we will be I can share a video with all of you, but we don't have enough time. Maybe next week I'm going to share that video where all the people who are going to be part of this program are involved in. So this is going to be a really we go see, anyway we need a kind of a degree, but in this degree, lot of this is a co-realization model. See, I have a perspective of an institute, I have my own experience, and I also agree with whatever you say, because I haven't seen your own world. I mean, there are the expertise what Dr. Balram Singh had was like he's opening up everything now, and Dr. Shastri has his own dimension of things where I wouldn't have entered, and we really need to learn from each other. And this course is just opening up. It's not that I know everybody, every professor in detail what the subject would be, but we opening up so that we all can co-realize and learn from each other. So that's the kind of course we are looking for, very deep down course. So 1 year, see, all different courses that people do, like health coach and other kind of course, what they teach, you think about it, in the West, what can they teach? It's same like the Bible. You try to take the Bible here and there again and again and again. What do you see? I mean, you cannot do more than, but here we have, as Dr. Balram Singh said, it's a Dharma. So we have amazing amount, this infinite amount of information is there. It's not like a finite, it's not finite. So therefore, we can bring a lot of things that are really needed for our present living. That kind of a course where you really, because there is a lot to be known than what we are doing today. All the Western knowledge has occupied us so much. We are giving a little time for our ancient knowledge. And how do we, replace this? Only by starting ourselves. So that's why we started this organization, to bring co-realize model. This co-realization model is to bring other organizations together. That's the main core of this organization, because there is somebody who need to unite this, right? So without any conflicts, how can we say? That's the course we are going to give in the beginning. Without any conflict, how we can work together? This is a bigger part, because in any organization you work with, we'll have conflicts. So first part, breaking that conflicts, the ego. And when you do that, I think we will have a better world, and you can add your perspectives too. So that's the one thing I wanted to announce, which is happening really soon. Okay,
Uh,
so
Shan, before you close, here is an invitation from my team members in India. We have a few affiliates. One of them is called National Institute of Vedic Sciences in Bangalore. I mean, connected to religion and highly placed and all that. We have number of Ayurvedic slash herbal slash healthcare wellness products made around Karnataka. I would say throughout India, but I would say in India, in Bangalore or in Karnataka. Now, they do not know the Western standards by which, I mean, like the FDA standards and other things, by which they can reach out to the society for safety reasons. Whether it is a sanitizer, whether it's a tulsi drop, whether it is the what you call the turmeric essence, neem, and other things. So we would request here on behalf of these institutions, we will provide the platform and connectivity. Please help us to get aligned with the global thinking on health. We will be thinking of swasthya, which is a higher dimension, but market needs health care before they talk of the swasthya. So how can we connect the science of health, which is basically the material, the chemistry, the biochemistry, and then the rules and other things, tests, to the traditional manufacturing systems? One I told about the Bhasma. 7 o'clock blade is no more done, and the existing Agastya Rasayan people don't even know, they just dump it. Um, there are several things, whether it is the Himalaya or the Patanjali or Kotakal, you can name them. And just go here to solve this problem. So we need to have the Rams and Lakshmans to come here and help us to understand what the world is thinking, how to deliver it to the society. So this is where I am open and willing to work without any kind of conflict. As you said, be a part of the team and be whatever I can do as a facilitator, a team worker for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Balramji, you wanted to go ahead? You want to have a comment or?
Well, I think this is a wonderful initiative, and I know Dr. Sastry for a very long time. We have tried to do few things together. I think my feeling is that, every effort that we should do, we should not be discouraged by, whatever the situation is, because, that's part of our tapa or struggle. And I think keep making the efforts. My experience is that if keep making the efforts, may not happen exactly the way you want to it to happen, but something happens, and that's just almost ordained that something will happen if you do the work. Something certainly will happen, and I think it's very important to personally get involved and do things and get young people involved. That is what you are trying to do. Get young people involved, because young people are looking for situations, because they're getting confused, and particularly the environmental issues that have been created over last couple of decades is getting there, and their life that is going to be affected. And it's our responsibility, our duty, just like for our children. We try to give them the best education, best health, best nutrition, so that they can eventually do that. I think this is the duty for everybody who is young, is kind of our child, and we need to give them the best intellectually that is possible to them, and best possible training, and whatever diploma courses you are offering, and wherever we can find a way to collaborate. I didn't tell all the details that my institute is doing, and one of them is that we are creating a world campus, INET's world campus, and which is I will share maybe more detail separately, because this is not the forum perhaps to talk about all that, but the point is that we want to create a situation whereby, by whether we liked it or not, Corona has created some situation, technology has created some situation, which I think we should try to embrace and use it for the best possible way. And I go back again to the Ram situation. He embraced whatever the situation was and used it in the best possible way, and then he succeeded, which is what I think we need to, one lesson we need to learn from a personality like that. Or Gandhi, more modern time, Gandhi used everything possible in his own way, in his own situation. And today we are trying to learn from him as to how he got that strong strength, power, and to be able to do that. I think people follow. Gandhi had a lot of followers, and there are more followers now of Gandhi than when he was alive. So it is because, we have the truth with us, and we have tested and we have tried it many times, and with everybody, who whether they agree with us or not, but we go with open heart, open mind, open arms. I think we will succeed. And I really feel that whole idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam should be practiced in our own individual sense. And I think it has a connection. Dr. Sastry talked about a little bit about the consciousness. The consciousness has connection. And so, I'm absolutely sure that if I am giving the right vibrations, people will get it. And I just have to continue trying to do that. And then this is an effort. I know Shan had connected with me maybe a year ago or so, or 2 years ago, for something, some conference that was happening in South India or something. But we have been at least communicating with each other and learning as to what is going on, and this will only grow. So I'm very hopeful, and I think I feel good about all the thing that both of you are doing, and many other people who are not speaking. I know I can see some of the people, at least from the US, also have connected. Some of my colleagues and students also are connected right now. They're all very excited about this opportunity, and and I feel very good about it. Overall, I feel very positive.
Excellent, sir. So we have, yes, Shastriji, yes, definitely we'll try to help with this. We will try to introduce, we are already planning to have a first shipment come from India, bringing many things. So we have identified what all herbs we can bring here. You don't have to go through the regular FDA. There are methods to do that. Only thing, we don't have a proper protocol to how to label it and getting approved. These things are to be learned by, and we can give certain training for this freely once we have done this, to people there, so that we need it. So many people are using it, and there is a requirement for all these herbs. So at least we can safely, not the rasayanas and all the alchemy part. Apart from that, if you are just generally using herbs, many herbs are already approved here and people are selling. So we need authentic. If there is a authentic preparation, then we should go for it, and this will encourage agriculture in India, and that's how we should go. We need to do justice to where this knowledge comes from, and that community should be gaining this overall. Whatever we doing, say people are saying like, I'm teaching yoga, I'm doing Ayurveda here, but if they cannot give back to the community, and that will, their karma will come back. So it is our duty to
Uh,
protect and bring back the economy or whatever status of India, and we definitely will try to help and support this. So
there is a question on in the chat box.
yeah, there is
I
a
don't know
question.
whether
Okay,
you want to.
where does the
Yeah,
practice
there is
of
a question
feeding
in the
ant,
chat box.
crow, dog, and protection of banyan trees, and even getting them married fit in overall um, way of life? So the lip sync. So probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want me to address or you want to address it, please go ahead.
Uh, well, you can address. I will just give a little quickly thing. So generally, we are practicing many things because we all are we develop jiva karunya ahimsa. We even consider every species as our own species. Ants, why do we put like column, the rangoli, right? So that is because we are feeding the even the ants. And crow and dog, we are finding it equally. There is nothing wrong. Banyan trees need to be protected. They have special qualities. They are antennas. They receive energy from the cosmos. So these all are what they are doing is not wrong, but not the scientific way of explaining that is been missing. So that's what now Dr. Balramji and all are coming up with, is like the explanation of the science way, why we are doing this, the science. That becomes very important here. So you can add, Dr.
Yeah. So I think there's a very valid point. Well, it's environmental protection is very important, and like when somebody says Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that actually comes from Upanishad. It says, I am bandhurayash paroveti garna lagchet sam udar charita nam Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That basically this is ours, is my brother, is my sister, is my family versus everybody else. It is a very small bit of thinking, which is basically the sages are telling that if you think like that, you are going to get in trouble. So then when you say, it didn't say that only the human beings are going to be our family. It says udara charita nam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam, is the whole planet is a family, and it should be treated like a family, which means we should feel for them, we should learn from them. Also, it's not just only we are being charitable, but we also should be learning from them, because there is so much to learn from ants. I mean, those of us who are from village area who have seen ants, the ants movement tells whether there's going to be rain or not rain. And the farmers use that. And behavior of animals are very important. Actually, the tsunami that happened that was in 2004, I believe, or 2003. A tsunami happened, a lot of people died, and none of the animals died. The whole Sri Lanka had a national park, and none of the animals died there. And none of the people from the tribal people, they did not die in Andaman Nicobar Island, but people on the beaches of Tamil Nadu, they died. We had a lot of technology. So it is not only we are doing a charity to animals, we are actually learning the animals have better ideas, better knowledge. And you can see, dogs are used to at the airports. There's so many places where we have they have a better sense of it. So when by appreciating that from science point of view, actually Corona has better sense than you and I have. And we might not think like that, but Corona has been there for a very long time. It has 1 million times faster transformability. That's why you're seeing more strains. So we cannot, you and I cannot survive. If I, in right now in Boston, the temperature is -2 degrees. If I leave somebody outside, they will be done by the end of the night. But Corona is able to survive despite the whole entire humanity is after it. It is still surviving, and it will survive forever. It has already created 5 strains that we know. Why? Because it has so much more flexibility, so much more change, willing to change. Whereas human beings, there was this question, Dr. Sastry was implying that maybe it has happened, why we have lost all this, the great technologies, great knowledge that we have had, is because we are not willing to change. We are not willing to embrace. We are not willing to adapt. We are not being flexible. And all that is we can learn is from animals and plants. And actually there is a paper in Nature that was published maybe 10 years ago or so that said that human beings are more likely to be extinct long before, because of this unnatural living and our inertia, and the kind of unlearning that we have, the kind of comfort we try to take, which is what I think our ancestors in India, they had always warned against. And so I think in addition to whatever San said, and also of course environmental protection, it's in our best interest of ourselves to learn from animals, because they are our ancestors. We don't worship them out of charity. We worship them out of respect, because science tells that they have better, they are more evolved than we are evolved. I didn't make the presentation. I have a whole entire presentation which shows that actually a mouse has 50,000 genes, and humans have only 30,000 genes. So mouse is actually, even if number of genes, they are more evolved. There is a little fern, it's not even full plant. It's not considered a full plant. It's like somewhere between fungi and plant. And that has 3,000 times more DNA than human beings have. 3,000 times more DNA. So what I'm saying, I think, the question that Dilip Singh asked is a broader question. And I think when I say the world order based on Ayurveda and yoga, and you can call it Vedanta or anything else, I mean, these are all related anyway. But when I say world order, I mean really look at the science completely differently. We are already in trouble by making everything average and not looking at individuals, and also at the same time being very isolated, not considering complete system that I was talking about, Vesti and Samasti. I think those concepts needs to be included in the science today. And animals, we need to learn a lot from animals, from coronavirus and everything after that. Viruses were the very first, and we just don't see them. So, but in Indian tradition, they have worshipping of unseen things also. So that includes obviously the things that are not seen by naked eyes. So I hope that my answer is a little bit helpful to you. Now, since I have the stage, San, I'm sorry. You did talk about, what else can we do. So I'm sharing my slides, just one slide. I want to just share, just to make that point that you were talking about, what to do with the technology, or Dr. Sastri also talked about, first of all, we need to have knowledge. And then secondly, when we have the knowledge, what do we do with it? And this, even this nanotechnology, actually there is a huge market of this nanotechnology. I mean, my lab works mostly on the silver nanoparticles, or silver bhasma. And silver nanoparticles, the world needs tons and so many tons of this nanoparticle for variety of, this is used in electronic industry, this is used in food, this is used in healthcare industry, textile industry. And if you really look at the total market for the bhasma in 2016, 4,000 tons, it was valued at $14 billion. 2026, they think it'll be 10,000 tons and will be worth 51 billion worth. And worldwide wheat market, is only 6 billion. So actually, and this technology is such that that you can almost any high school, maybe not even high school, maybe Sean has a diploma that he can teach all these people some of these technologies without having to have a particular degree. But definitely the level of technology that is being used is it can help the farming industry. The agriculture is 53% of the employment, and it contributes only like 10% or 11% of the economy. I think it can turn around, and the farmers who are protesting, we should be providing this kind of information to them, this kind of opportunity for them, rather than creating this discord of silly thing here and silly thing there. So I think we can certainly move into that direction. And interesting thing is, this is the last point I wanted to make, is the person I first got introduced about these things is actually not a scientist. This guy, his name is also Dr. Sastri, and he is a astrologer. And the only reason he knew about some of these things, because he knows Sanskrit. And in Sanskrit, he told me, and I have an interview recorded of him, where he says that every Sanskrit sloka has 6 meanings. And one of them is called Ausadhi meaning. And that one has to know. Many Sanskrit scholars don't know that. So there is so much thing that we can, this is just one example. I'm sure there are other one could try to do. So I thought, I would, since I had the floor, I might as well address that question.
And Dr. Shastri also means a yogi and a scientist and a visionary. So Gnana Vijnana Truptatma is the word used in 7th chapter of Gita. And when the Gita teaches, Krishna says, I will teach you the Gnana part and the Vijnana part, and validation and the application. So we are studying Gita only as a Vedanta, high-end philosophy, intellectual deliberation. We have forgotten the yoga part of it. That is not the point for discussion now. I leave it to Balram Singh ji. Your point on silver bhasma, we have the agency, very specific government agency in which one of my close persons work, and they are looking how this is going to help the wet sciences and the agricultural sciences. We can talk about that separately.
Sure. I think it's a beautiful idea to, think about names, but my name is Singh, but I'm not a lion.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think we can end here. I know you all are celebrating, all the nice festivals. So you should, sleep, and early morning, many people wake up early morning to do their sadhana. So, we don't want to keep you awake. So let us conclude here. So I thank you all for the wonderful time, and we had very wonderful, contents today. Lot of thought provoking contents, very much needed. And we'll have extended version of this in later time when Dr. Balram has time. So we'll coordinate with more programs, and with also with Shastri ji. we need to bring this wisdom up, and some way, one way or the other, organizations should join and bring this. It's not just conferences, only just workshop or something. That's very transformative programs where we can really stay with the students, and group as a group we can bring this knowledge to the students and transform them in 6 months, 1 week program, then just giving random conferences then and there. When you're staying with the students for a few days and giving deep knowledge, they they just get transformed, and that's one thing that to think about, then giving just conference lectures. So we'll try to do something, and if your time permits, uh, we can include that as part of a co-realization model where both organizations, more than one organization, can involve. So thank you all very. Have a great Pongal and Sankranti, and any other festival in India. All are precious, because any festival we cannot neglect. It is all scientific. Whatever we do, many things has scientific meaning. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you.
Say-
Namaskar. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Namaskar.